On April 3rd, 2022, successful model and OF content creator Courtney Clenney would make a call to 911 stating that her boyfriend had been stabbed and that he needed medical assistance. Courtney would claim that she had stabbed her boyfriend in self-defense and that she had actually thrown a knife that would strike him right in the chest for fear of her life. But when the authorities would dig a little deeper into the case, they would uncover some disturbing details about the couple's volatile relationship. Details that would contradict Courtney's story. So let's get into those details. Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jen and I talk about true crime cases on this channel. As a friendly reminder before we jump into the case, if you haven't already, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and don't forget to click the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Courtney Clenney was born on April 21st, 1996 in Austin, Texas. And while there isn't tons of information available online regarding her family, I do know that she did grow up in a household consisting of her mother Deborah, her father Kim, and her sister Morgan. She's got blonde hair and blue eyes, and I think she's the type of person that a lot of people would look at and be like, okay, yeah, she's a very attractive girl. While in high school, Courtney did decide that she wanted to really put in a lot more effort into pursuing a career in modeling and acting. She wasn't a huge fan of school in general and just didn't really enjoy the environment there. She definitely wanted to pursue something more creative and to really put herself out there, so she did audition for a few commercials and acting jobs, and she would actually land a few jobs. From her IMDb page, it does seem like her biggest acting role was in a movie called Everybody Wants Some. This movie was released in 2016 and she did play sorority girl number 1. And in addition to acting, Courtney was doing quite a bit of modeling and commercials. She was also apparently getting scripts for a few Fox shows as well as a callback for a Michael Bay film. And eventually, as Courtney began to land more gigs and gain more followers and become more known to the public, she would adopt the stage name Courtney Taylor. While I was doing my research, I did find that a lot of the articles that I was going through did refer to Courtney as Courtney Clenney. However, you can find a lot of information about Courtney by researching Courtney Taylor. Now, as Courtney became more involved within the modeling and acting industry, she did find herself faced with unrealistic beauty standards, which can be found in these types of industries. However, it seemed like Courtney didn't let these unrealistic standards get her down. She would actually use them as motivation to get more interested and involved within the fitness and health industry. She would find herself becoming very passionate about working out and being healthy, and she would end up attending tons of fitness conventions and evolving into somewhat of a fitness influencer. According to a few reports, Courtney is actually a certified personal trainer as well as a EHP labs athlete. Courtney also competed in a bikini competition in 2016, and a few weeks before the competition took place, she would be invited out to Venice, California by Gold's Gym to film a workout video. Now, this was a pretty big deal because Gold's Gym is a really famous gym in California and tons of A-list celebrities actually go and work out there. So this was a really big deal for Courtney's career. At this point, it really did seem like she was starting to build a solid career for herself. She was making money from modeling, from acting, from doing commercials, and partaking in these competitions. However, in August 2018, Courtney would find herself in some legal trouble when she crashes her car into another woman's car on the Mopac Expressway in Austin. Courtney had been drinking and had been intoxicated during the crash, and the other woman had actually initially sued Courtney for damages, but would later drop and dismiss the charges. Now, in 2019, Courtney would meet Christian Obumseli, who she would end up dating up until his murder in 2022. Christian would grow up in Dallas, Texas, in a household consisting of his mom, his dad, his grandmother, brother, and sister. Christian's family and friends would describe him to be someone who was very warm and loving, and just a very kind-hearted and just happy person. He was the type of person that other people really loved to be around, and friends have said that he was very reliable and the best person to have around in your life when something was going on and you were in need of support. He had this ability to make people feel very special and very loved, and he was just described to be someone who was overall a really great guy. Christian was also very intelligent and was a successful entrepreneur. He did do crypto trading and stock trading full time, and it seems like he was very successful in what he did. Now, in 2020, about a year after Christian and Courtney would begin dating, they would end up moving in together, and this would also be around the same time that COVID would hit the world and everybody would be going into lockdown and everybody would be stuck at home. It was also around this time period that OF would become very popular, and you would have tons of people signing up for accounts and creating content on OF. Courtney would end up jumping onto this bandwagon and setting up an account, and she would actually end up becoming very successful on OF. There are reports that she was making up to 5 figures a month from OF only. I actually do believe that she was doing quite well for herself before OF, but after she started doing OF, she definitely started making tons more money and became a lot more known to the public. And while Christian was quite successful in what he was doing and he was making a decent income already, OF and the success that Courtney was seeing from that really allowed her to step in as the breadwinner in the relationship. In 2020, the first year that Courtney would start her OF account, she reportedly made almost $1 million. And in 2021, she made close to $2 million. Now, in 2020, during the lockdown, Courtney and Christian would live together in an apartment in Dallas, Texas. And because they had to remain indoors all of the time, 24/7, and were just with each other constantly, this did lead to a number of issues in their relationship. They did start arguing a lot, and it got so bad that people in their lives would begin to notice that they were constantly just yelling and fighting with each other. A neighbor of theirs even stated that from November 2020 onwards, their fighting got so bad and so volatile that they actually had to have police come and check in on the couple numerous times. The neighbor would also go on to state that they've heard Christian and Courtney screaming and fighting with each other in their rooms, and that there were times where they would hear banging on the walls as well as things like items being thrown in the apartment. And things would continue to get worse in Christian and Courtney's relationship. In July of 2021, during a trip to Vegas, Courtney would actually be detained on suspicion of domestic battery against Christian. They had just gone back to their hotel from a night out with one another, and when they got back to the hotel, they were arguing about something, and that argument would escalate to the point that Courtney would pick up a glass and basically throw it at Christian's head. This glass would hit Christian in the head and would cause him to bleed. And rightly so, Christian would end up calling the police, who would arrive and who would speak with Courtney, and Courtney would admit to them that yes, she did throw this glass at Christian's head, but it's fine because she's thrown tons of other things at him before. Courtney's then realized what she's just said and that she could actually probably get in trouble for this, so she actually tries to backtrack to claim that she had thrown this glass at Christian's head in self-defense. However, authorities didn't really believe that story, so they did end up charging her for this. Christian did decide that he didn't want to proceed with the charges, so he would actually drop the charges. There's also a video of Christian and Courtney in an elevator in 2022 where Courtney can be seen hitting Christian. Courtney can be seen attacking Christian repeatedly, and Christian's just trying to get away from her, and it's just a really horrible situation. Now, despite all of the chaos in the relationship, the two would continue to be together and continue to date. However, I do believe that they were in an on and off relationship. So, they would fight and break up, and then a few days later, they would end up getting back together. And in July of 2022, the couple would decide that maybe a change of scenery might be good for their relationship. So this would prompt the couple to move to Miami, Florida. In Miami, Florida, they would both rent out a luxury apartment in a high-rise building together. Unfortunately, the move did not solve their problems, and all of their fighting would just continue. Neighbors in their new condo would report that they would hear Christian and Courtney fighting all of the time. They would yell at each other and things would be thrown around in their rooms. So exactly the same situation as what was happening when they were living in Dallas, Texas. There were even times where Courtney would end up kicking Christian out of their apartment. She would yell at him and tell him that she never wanted to see him again. Christian would end up leaving, and then a few days later he would come back and the couple would make up and get back together, and this cycle would repeat. Their relationship and their fighting situation just really did not improve whatsoever. Police were even called by the building security people numerous times because of all the disturbances coming from their apartment. An affidavit even states that Christian and Courtney's building management team were looking into legal ways to essentially evict the couple from the apartment due to the number of incidents that were happening, as well as the number of times that the police would have to come and check in on them due to their fighting. Now, on April 3rd of 2022, the fighting between the two would escalate, and this would lead to the unfortunate stabbing of Christian Obumseli. Now, the Miami Police Department did create a reconstructed timeline of what could have happened that day, so let's go through that timeline. The day seemingly started out as a peaceful one. Christian and Courtney woke up and they spent some time together. They hung out with their dogs. And then at around 1:15 p.m., Christian would take the dogs out for a walk. He would take them over to the park, and Courtney would stay home to do an Instagram live. Now, I have linked Courtney's Instagram live in my description. It's about a 20-minute Instagram live. Honestly, you don't really need to watch it. There's not much happening in that live. I can just summarize it up for you. In that live, Courtney would talk about her nails, and there was this one interesting part though where somebody would ask Courtney hey, do you support the police? To which Courtney would respond, oh yeah, she definitely supports the police. However, Courtney does go on to say that she feels like there are times where the police have just not done their jobs, and she's felt like she's not been helped by them.
Do you support the police? I've actually, yes, I do. I think a lot of times they don't do their job, for sure. And in my experience, I've not been helped by them. But I think for sure, they typically do their job. And it shouldn't, I don't know.
But to be honest, aside from the comment that I've just mentioned, there isn't anything crucial or important said or done in this Instagram live. The only reason that comment stood out to me is just because I'm curious why she said that, why she made that comment, or why she might have felt the way that she did about it. Now, at 4:32 p.m., Christian would return with the dogs, and the condo surveillance videos would catch him on video returning to the apartment with the dogs and 2 sandwiches from Subway. Phone records do show that Courtney had called Christian at 4:01 p.m. just before getting onto her Instagram live, and then at 4:33 p.m. just as Christian was entering their apartment. At 4:43 p.m., after Christian has already returned to their apartment, Courtney would call her mother and would be on the phone with her mother for 6 minutes. She would then hang up the phone, and then just seconds later, at 4:49 p.m., Courtney would make a second call to her mother, and she would be on that call with her mother until 4:56 p.m. Police do believe that the stabbing could have happened anytime from 4:33 p.m. to 4:57 p.m. Within that time period, neighbors of Christian and Courtney did hear them fighting in their room. The fighting was apparently so bad that they would end up reaching out to the security team in the building, and the security team would end up calling the police as well. So at 4:57 p.m. when Courtney calls 911, she tells them that Christian's been stabbed and that she needs medical assistance for him ASAP. Now Christian can be heard in the background saying that he's losing feeling in his arm.
I can't feel my arm.
And on the phone call, Courtney can be heard saying to him,
Baby, I'm so sorry.
police would enter their apartment at 5:04 p.m. And when they entered Christian and Courtney's apartment, they would find blood all over the floor as well as blood smears on their kitchen counters. Courtney herself would be found sitting in a corner of one of her rooms, just covered in Christian's blood. She had blood smears all over her arms, her clothes, and even on her face. Authorities, when looking through the apartment, would also find blood smears on the floor, as if Courtney had been dragging Christian from one room to another room. So when the authorities go in and they find Courtney and Christian, they would rush Christian over to the hospital, and then they would take Courtney into the police station for questioning. Now, because Courtney's mom was one of the last phone calls that Courtney had made aside from the 911 call, they would reach out to Courtney's mother to ask her a few questions. I believe that the police did question Courtney's mom on the telephone, so they took a telephone statement from Courtney's mother. And Deborah, who is Courtney's mother, would tell the police that while on the phone with her daughter, she did hear muffled yelling in the background. Deborah would also state that she could hear Courtney yelling at Christian to get out of their apartment and that he was a liar. However, when the police did ask Deborah about the details of Courtney and Christian's fight, Deborah did state that she had no idea about the details and that her and Courtney did not discuss the actual fight while they were on the phone. Now, despite Courtney's mom claiming that she doesn't really have details of what happened, I do think that she might be lying and that she knows more than she's actually letting on. When investigators were going through Courtney's phone, they did find a text message from Deborah to Courtney that was received on Courtney's phone at 5:25 p.m. And this was at 5:25 p.m. on April 3rd, so the same day as the stabbing. And in that text, Deborah would remind Courtney to state that it was in self-defense and to not say anything further until her lawyer was present. Now, Courtney's interrogation was recorded and it's about 4 hours long. I have linked it in the description of this video, so you can absolutely go and watch the video yourself if you'd like to. However, I will also be summarizing it here for you guys because I did watch the 4-hour-long interrogation video so that you don't have to. Now, in the interrogation video, the actual interrogation will begin at the 19-minute and 46-second mark. And when the officers enter the room, the first thing that Courtney says to them after saying hi is, "My apologies for being absolutely effing covered in blood."
Hello.
My apologies for being absolutely fucking covered in blood.
Listen, you don't have to apologize, okay? I completely understand. Alright?
The officers would spend the next 15 minutes asking Courtney basic questions about her life, like, for example, how old is she, what's her name, where she's from, etc., etc. And eventually Courtney would begin to talk about her relationship with Christian. When discussing her relationship with Christian to the police officers, she would tell them that she and Christian had a very warm, very happy, and very loving relationship. She would tell them that she and Christian have been together for about 2 years now and that they were living together in the apartment that they had just come from. Officers would then try to ask Courtney about Christian's family and to see if she might have any contact information for any of his family members. At this point, the officers didn't know anything about Christian's family and they didn't know much about Christian. They would ask Courtney if maybe she had Christian's mom's phone number.
I think that I would have his mom on my phone for sure, and then maybe his grandma.
Okay. What's his mom's name?
You know, he's told me. I think I'm terrible. I really
Now, this is very weird because you're in a long-term relationship with this man and you've met his mom 4 or 5 times now, but you don't know her name. She then goes on to say that Christian is a very private person and he doesn't talk to her much about his family. Courtney eventually does at one point admit that she and Christian have had a rocky relationship, but she's very adamant that she and Christian were very serious about trying to make things work. She even tells the officers that she and Christian were planning to move into a home together, like an actual house with a yard, because they were planning to get another dog together. They had actually picked out a golden retriever named Mellow. She then right after goes on to tearfully say that she hopes that she and Christian will still get the opportunity to do this.
We have the dog picked out. It's a golden retriever. We're going to name Mellow. So we're going to get a house. So we can have a backyard. Because I have 2 dogs and then we're going to have 3. So we're planning on staying here for a while. I just hope we get the opportunity to do that.
And about 40 or 41 minutes into the video, Courtney can be seen getting a little bit snappy with the police officers. She begins to cry and she begins to say that she wants to talk to her parents and then she wants to go to the hospital.
My dad handles I am so freaking out right now a little bit. I want to go to the hospital and I want to just call my fucking mom.
And at one point she does ask the officers if there's any chance she can get to go home. And the officers basically tell her that at this point, we just need to finish the interrogation and then we can figure out the next steps. And at around the 45-minute mark, Courtney begins to talk about what happened in that day. Courtney tells the officers that she had been home doing some laundry, watching some videos, and she was also doing an Instagram live, and that Christian had offered to take her dogs out to the park and to grab some sandwiches on the way home. She then says that when Christian arrived home, he and Courtney would get into an argument about their location sharing service on their phone.
And I said something about oh, are you gonna reshare your location with me? Did you want to share it? And he said, yeah, I shared it. And I was like, oh, when did you do that? And he goes, the other day, when you were done with me. And I was like, okay, well, fair enough. Reshare it. And then he told, it kind of turned into a little argument or something. And then he told me to reshare mine, and I was like, okay, yeah, I will. And then I didn't do it immediately. He asked me about it again. And I don't know what I was thinking, but it just said something about, well, what if I'm somewhere you don't want me to be?
Okay.
Which I wouldn't have been. I love him. But just maybe you don't want to know where I am. I guess maybe they'll just hurt him because he was pressing me.
Now, this is when Courtney begins to go into a little bit more detail about what happened right before the stabbing. Courtney would tell the officers that during their fight or during their argument, Christian had pinned her up against the wall, and then somehow she ended up on the floor and he was choking her on the floor. Courtney tells the officers that she doesn't believe that Christian was trying to kill her, but this did happen twice before, and when it was happening, she was really scared.
And he ended up pinning me against the wall, and then I said choking me on the floor. It's just they were looking at my neck, and I was I'm not saying choking me whatever, but he had my neck and this happened twice before, okay, where I couldn't breathe and I was on the floor. Yeah. I could not breathe, and I don't think that he was trying to kill me, but I was scared, and all 3 times I have been scared.
Now, what I do find very strange in this part of the video is that she has spent most of the interrogation up to this point basically crying. But when she begins to recount the details of the stabbing, she's showing very little emotion and almost no tears at all. However, I do notice that when she goes into details about picking up a knife in defense, she does get emotional for just a few seconds, but then that emotion quickly fades away and she's back to being very emotionless, almost like she's too focused on the story that she's telling that she forgets that she should be upset about this.
So yeah, I'm on the floor in heavy pain and lets me up. I'm on the get my mom on the phone, and I'm just trying to really remember. I get my mom on the phone, and I remember she was standing like against the couch. Like we were obviously it was a big deal at this point. So this happened like over by the door, and somehow moved like over in the living room. He was standing by the couch, facing toward the kitchen. I was in the kitchen, and then he just like I could see like all the whites in his eyes, and it was like coming at me. And so I grabbed one of these knives. My mom got me for Christmas. I grabbed one of them, and I was like, I swear to God. I swear to God. It was just like, I grab and be like, don't come anywhere closer to me. Because, earlier, that happened 2 other times, I couldn't fucking breathe. I'm sorry. I couldn't breathe. And it's very scary. And I just think, like, just like this kind of thing where I was saying, like, do you know if he's okay? If he's choking me and he's angry enough, he might, this is different, I think. But if he's, like, choking me or, like, pinning me or something and I can't breathe, he might go too long. So I grab a knife and I said, don't come anywhere closer to me. I had absolutely no intention of using it. I'm on the phone with my mom, and he's coming at me like he's going to grab either the phone or, like, the knife or something. And so I was just like, I was like, don't come any closer. Coming at me, and I threw it. And I meant for it to go.
How far away was he?
I was by my fridge, and he was like by the edge of one of the chairs of the sofa.
Okay.
Like
comparing to what
10 feet. I'm trying to think in my head. I'm trying to make the.
Was he closer than I am?
No, but he's further.
So like the length of this room?
No, further than that.
Okay.
Oh, well, if I said, yeah, you're right, it was more than 10 feet then. It was definitely further than this.
Okay.
I mean, it's closer. It looks a lot smaller than it is here.
It was further than this.
Okay. So then, you were by the fridge and he was by the couch? You were by the fridge and he was by the couch?
Yes, I was in front of the fridge. He was by the couch.
Yes. And then
behind my island.
And then what kind of movements did he make at the moment? He was gonna walk
running
up?
At me.
Running? Okay.
Well, charging, aggressively walking, something.
Now, about an hour into the interrogation, the officers do, or maybe they're detectives, so let's call them detectives. The detectives do ask Courtney to, again, tell them what happened that day. Basically, like, walk them through the events of that day again. And they tell her, we just want you to just recount everything again to us, just to make sure that we have all of the details correct. And this is actually when Courtney gets a little bit annoyed, and you can see it on her face and the way that she says what she's going to say next. She looks at the officers and then, I quote, she says, "Didn't you write everything down?" And the way she says it is just so sassy and so, like, you can tell that she's annoyed by this.
So, you think you can tell us the story one more time, just so I can make sure that I didn't miss anything?
Didn't you write everything down?
No, he's writing it down for me. But I just want to make sure that you can explain to us one more time the story.
My theory about this is that this is probably a tactic used by authorities to essentially see if details were left out during the first retelling of the story, or if maybe details from the first story and the second story don't match up. That's my theory. I don't know. I would like to hear what you guys think, but that's my theory about what happens in interrogations. I feel like a lot of times they're asking you to repeat things over and over again to see if your stories match up or if you're leaving any information out. But yeah, let me know if you guys agree with that or if you guys think it's just normal standard due diligence stuff. Anyways, Courtney does agree to, retell the story for a second time, and when she does, she actually begins to add a lot more information. In the video, you can hear Courtney telling the officers that she and Christian actually did break up at the end of March. She would then tell the officers that her mom had actually flown into Miami to stay with Courtney at her apartment because she was very upset and very heartbroken about this breakup. However, the couple would end up rekindling their relationship and would end up getting back together on April 1st, just 2 days before Christian's stabbing. And in the video, you can hear Courtney telling the officers that on the 1st of April, she and Christian had made a pact that they would never hurt each other physically during an argument or out of anger, and that they would never gaslight each other again.
We've broken up. I broke up with him about a week ago. My mom came into town. She was in town because of it. And I told her, like, what am I saying? Anyway, she came into town because of this. She was there for about 6 days. My boyfriend was freaking squatting in my elevator, like, little room. But I didn't want to kick him out because he said he wanted to be close to me. I'm like, okay. I eventually feel like, okay, I got this under control. You can go home. Day she goes home. That crap with the security guard who I guess just had an agenda. That happened yesterday.
Okay.
Or was it the day before yesterday? Honestly, I really don't. I can't think of it. It's the day before yesterday or yesterday. So.
Which security guard is this? Do you know his name?
I don't remember his name. I could point him out in the lineup.
Okay.
In 1 second. So after that fact, I was like, wow, you just tried to cause a problem for no reason. I thought it was his fault. I was like, why are you doing this? Like, just because, like I said, that we're over, blah, blah, blah. And he was trying to talk to me, and I just didn't want to talk to him. I really let him have it over the phone, and I let him come back and spend the night, and then he explained the whole thing, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is definitely too nice for you. Yeah. He explained the whole thing, and I was like, okay, you know what? Let's agree. We will never, like, touch each other again out of anger, and he will never gaslight me again. Those were the two, like, main things.
Courtney would then tell them that on April 3rd, that's when the argument happened, and Christian would pin her up against the wall and then choke her on the floor, and then Christian would let Courtney go, and Courtney would make her way over to the kitchen. And because she's so scared of Christian at this point, she goes to her knife block and she takes out a knife. And Courtney would tell Christian to stay away from her, and in this point of the story, she reminds the officers that she's feeling very scared. And because she's so scared of Christian, she decides to throw the knife that she has in her hands at Christian. She tells the officers that she didn't stab Christian, but she threw a knife, which would then hit him right in the chest and strike a major artery. Again, the story is that she did not intentionally stab Christian. She just got scared of him and then flung a knife at him, which would go in 3 inches deep into his chest, hitting a major artery and causing him to bleed out. Christian would then fall to the ground, and this is when Courtney would panic and would call her mother. Yes, she calls her mother instead of calling 911 to report that her boyfriend was bleeding out. And she calls her mother not once, but twice. At this point, Courtney tells the officers that Christian is still conscious, and he's basically telling her that, he's bleeding out. She needs to go find something to stop the bleeding. Now, I think that the reason blood smears were found on the floor is because Courtney was probably dragging Christian from one room to another to try to find something to stop his bleeding. That, to me, would make the most sense. Courtney would then also tell the officers again that, when everything happened, she calls her mother once and then hangs up and then calls her mother again. And after she gets off the phone call with her mother, she calls the police. And then she tells the police that Christian has been stabbed and he needs help. And even on that call, Christian can be heard in the background telling her, you need to stop the bleeding. Now, in the next part of the interrogation, Courtney can be heard again getting sassy with the officers. She asked them, "When can I change my bloody clothes? I was holding him when he was bleeding." So the officers tell her that they're gonna find something for her to change into. And she's kind of like, what? What do you mean find something for me to change into? I just want to change into my own clothes. I want to go home, I want to take a shower, and I want to change out of these clothes and change into my own clothes. And the way she's saying all of this just sounds, I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way. I just feel like you just stabbed your boyfriend who's now in the hospital. Changing your clothes should be the least of your concerns right now. Throughout the entire interrogation, I don't get the sense that she's that worried about Christian. She was more worried about, again, her clothes, her dogs, and basically everything else but Christian. Now, the first half of Courtney's interrogation video does end at the 1 hour and 23 mark, after which she is left alone in the interrogation room until the 1 hour and 54-minute mark. When that time comes around, the detective does enter the interrogation room again, and Courtney does ask, like, hey, are there any updates on Christian? And the detective tells her, oh, well, we have another detective at the hospital, so we'll check with them and see, if there's any updates. The officer then tells Courtney that they do need to go into Courtney and Christian's apartment to take photos of the crime scene and see if there's any evidence they can collect. And he basically explains to Courtney that there's two ways that this can be done. Either Courtney signs a consent form, or they have to get like a warrant in order to enter the apartment to do what they need to do. And it actually does look like Courtney is like, okay, fine, yeah, I'll just sign the consent form. And right after signing that form, she brings up the fact again that she wants to go shower and she wants to change out of these clothes and to put on her own clothes. The officer then tells Courtney, okay, yeah, fine, but before that can happen, we're gonna need to photograph you in your clothes, and these photographs will be kept on record, and then we're gonna give you a hazmat suit to wear for the time being. The detective exits the room at the 1 hour and 57-minute mark, and then a team of people come in around the 2 hour and 22-minute mark, and they take the photos and they give her the hazmat suit to change into, which she does. Now, after that point, not too much happens until after the 3 hour and 25-minute mark. At that point, Frank Preto, Courtney's lawyer, does arrive and does sit down to chat with her. The lawyer speaking with Courtney tells Courtney that the detectives are going to need her to look at a photo of Christian that they found on her social media and to just basically confirm that this is indeed Christian, because again, at this point in time, they don't have much information about Christian, his family, and they just need Courtney to identify that the person who's in the hospital is indeed Christian Obumseli. Courtney tells him, yeah, that's fine. Are there any other updates on Christian? Did you catch how in the video when she's talking about how if Christian isn't stabilized, then this is just so much worse for her? To me, that is such a weird thing to say.
He's stable.
Yeah.
And I've been asking so much.
And that's what we're waiting for.
I mean, I feel like at the end, if he's not, that's a lot worse for me.
Anyways, the lawyer and Courtney do continue to talk about how she can't go home yet until the interrogation is over. Everything's gonna be fine. He's just basically trying to give her reassurance so that she just feels a little bit more at ease. And at around the 3 hour and 30-minute mark, this is when the detectives will come back into the room and tell Courtney that Christian did not make it.
So we have to inform you that Christian did not make it. Okay. Unfortunately, the doctors did what they could. And
Christian is dead.
Yes.
Oh my God.
At the 3 hour and 39-minute mark of the video, when she mentions that she was holding Christian for so long. Christian was being held in Courtney's arms while he was bleeding out, and that there was a security woman who was just standing by in their apartment watching it all happen.
I swear I was holding him for so effing long. And the security lady was standing right there, and I was like, why are they taking so effing long? And I was sitting there just bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding.
And I find this weird because I watched the entire interrogation video and she never once mentioned that there was an authority figure present in their apartment while this was happening before the police had arrived. Why did she leave that piece of information out? And this also makes me wonder, what else could she be leaving out? So once the interrogation wraps up, an autopsy is done on Christian's body. This is when the authorities discover that the stab wound on Christian's chest was a close contact stab wound. The stab wound would be made by a powerful downward thrust by a knife, which would go 3 inches deep into his chest, hitting a major artery, which would cause him to bleed out. The major artery that was hit was actually near his heart, which would explain why there was just so much blood and why he was bleeding out so quickly. About 72 hours after the interrogation, Courtney would be released and no charges would be made. And this would rightly upset a number of people. I mean, regardless if the stabbing was done intentionally or unintentionally, the fact that she was just released and not charged with anything is pretty insane. After her release, Courtney's lawyer did put out statements saying that, Courtney was very devastated by what had happened and she's very remorseful and she was currently grieving the loss of her boyfriend. However, about 5 days after the incident, Courtney is seen at a hotel bar with her father. While there, Courtney is recognized by 2 hotel guests who do go up to her to confront her.
Brother. Yeah, and they're seeking justice.
Sir?
Yeah,
What?
let's all videotape her. Okay. Right now, you should go. Yeah, you should go. Because you just lost your boyfriend. Yeah, you did. Yeah, and He's fighting. Yeah, okay, cool.
You can see in the video Courtney turning around as she's leaving and looking at the guests and saying to them, "He tried to kill me." Suddenly, Courtney's trying to claim that Christian was trying to kill her. However, let's not forget that the officers did take photos of her body, and there were also no bruising around her neck from the supposed choking that Christian was doing to her. Let's not forget again that she was the one found covered in her boyfriend's blood. The same boyfriend that she had stabbed and essentially killed. So the police do start to dig a little bit deeper into what could have happened. And remember how earlier in this video I did mention that Courtney and Christian made a pact on the 1st of April to essentially just be better to one another? Well, that pact did not last. On April 2nd, the police would be called to the couple's apartment complex because of an altercation between the two. The officers who were at the scene that evening did mention that Courtney was intoxicated, and they could clearly see that she was intoxicated due to the way that she was speaking and the way that her eyes looked. And when speaking to the officers, Courtney does tell them that she wants to be exonerated, which basically means that she wants all and any blame to be removed from her.
All right, so what do you want us to do?
I want to be like exonerated, I guess, of like anything wrong. And I want him, okay, the police are here. I want a restraining order against Christian Obumseli.
Well, we don't issue those.
Because, no, I'm serious.
To court.
Can I do that? Where
you have to go to court. You have to go to downtown.
But how
or
can I make
petition.
myself first? Because I know him and he would do it. How can I make myself first?
You gotta.
But this is strange because in the video, she's claiming that she's the victim and that Christian is the abuser. So what would she be to blame for and what would she need to be exonerated from? Shortly after that, another video does resurface, and this is the video that I mentioned earlier of Courtney and Christian in an elevator in February of 2022, where Christian is being attacked by Courtney. And about 4 months after Christian's death, Courtney is finally arrested in August of 2022. She would actually be arrested in Hawaii, where she was recovering from substance abuse and PTSD. According to her arrest warrant, the MPD, Miami Police Department, and the Miami-Dade State Attorney did state that Christian and Courtney were in a violent and toxic domestic relationship for over 2 years, and that their relationship would include a lot of fighting that would lead to Courtney, quote, throwing and or using weapons on various occasions. It was also concluded that, and I quote, these incidents culminated on April 3rd, 2022, with the defendant acting without justification and causing the death of a victim by stabbing the victim in an imminently dangerous act, demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. Throughout the entire duration of this case, Courtney has claimed self-defense.
Authorities say Clenney's story of self-defense has inconsistencies in it. She is facing a second-degree murder charge.
Her and her team, her legal team, even stated that she and Christian were not together during the time of the incident and that he actually did not live in the apartment. Christian's name was not on the lease, it was only Courtney's name, so they definitely tried to use this as a support for their arguments. They even stated that Christian had been stalking Courtney for weeks prior to the incident and that he had been committing a felony because he didn't live in the apartment and had entered the apartment without Courtney's permission. Now, what's interesting here is that the prosecutors would go on to say that Courtney loves her dogs. And even during the interrogation footage, you can see Courtney making a fuss about her dogs being alone while she's being interrogated. So you can clearly see just how much she really loves her dogs. But on the day of Christian's stabbing, she gives Christian permission to take her dogs, who she loves so much, to the park alone. So clearly she trusted Christian enough to leave him alone with her dogs. Also, when she's ending her Instagram live, she mentions to her followers that she's gonna log off now and she's gonna go and eat her Subway sandwiches.
I'm gonna go hit my puff and then eat my sandwich because I just can't hit it in front of you guys. You know, it's just not acceptable. So
So if he really was trespassing and she was that scared of him, why was she so chill to see him, and why was she so chill about him taking her dogs to the park alone, dogs that she loves so much? And then why was she so chill about him bringing in a sandwich that she was gonna go eat with him? There was even a point where Courtney's legal team were trying to claim that Courtney and Christian had never been together. And I don't mean that they were claiming that the two had broken up. I mean they were claiming that Christian and Courtney had never ever dated. And they actually tried to use Courtney's OF bio to support this claim. Her bio would read, proud Texan, full-time fitness model and foodie living with my 2 dogs, Jessie and Ranger. I've just moved to Miami, so I need your positive vibes. Big scary changes for this little Texas girl. Because Courtney did mention that she was in a relationship in her bio, they tried to use this as evidence to prove that she and Christian had never been dating. This was shut down by prosecutors because honestly it's just the most ridiculous reasoning. There's tons of OF creators who don't state that they have partners because I mean, it just sometimes honestly does do better for their career to not acknowledge that they have a partner when they're creating their content. And at one point, Courtney's team even tried to get Christian's body exhumed. And this is essentially like just digging him up after burial and then re-examining his body. Christian's family did deny this request because, for one, it's incredibly traumatizing to have to bury your son or your family member and then to dig him up, re-examine him, and then have to bury him all over again. And honestly, there was no good reason to be digging him up because an autopsy had already been done and they had the report of the autopsy that was completed. Frank Preto, who is Courtney's lawyer, did try to claim that Christian was the abuser in Christian and Courtney's relationship and that Courtney was a victim in this relationship the whole time. But friends of the couple have come out to say that that was not true whatsoever. And one friend named Ashley Vaughn would be quoted saying to News 10 the following statements. "We've seen her hit him. I've never seen him hit her. From what we've personally experienced between the both of them, we believe that Christian wouldn't put her in a position where she would need to stab him to protect herself." Her defense team then got really desperate and then had tried to essentially pick text messages to present between Christian and Courtney that would show Christian as the abuser and Courtney as the victim. This didn't work out because authorities were also able to present their own text messages between Courtney and Christian that would show Courtney as the abuser. There are even recordings available of Courtney yelling at Christian and even using racial slurs.
"I am so sorry." So shut up and let me slap you.
The recording captures an argument between the couple about someone Obumseli ran into while on a bike ride.
Get off of me! You literally talked to her without telling me! Courtney, I was on a bike ride and she passed me and I said hi. You and Courtney are having a live chat. My bad, I forgot to tell you that. That doesn't make you to act and call me a
So 2 months before Courtney's arrest, Courtney would purchase a $1.3 million home right down the road from her parents' house. And it's a gorgeous home. It's a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom home with an outdoor pool and a jacuzzi. And when the story of what happened got out to the public, a lot of people, meaning a lot of traffic, were directed to Courtney's OF account. Which is really unfortunate because this means that she ended up making a lot of money from the attention that she got from this case, essentially. She would actually go on to make $1.8 million while she was sitting in jail. $1.8 million for essentially just all of the attention she got from stabbing and murdering her boyfriend. I believe that OF has now deactivated her account, but I'm not sure what actually happens to the money that she made. I don't know if she gets to keep that money, like if it was deposited to her before the deactivation or if it's been held. I don't know how that works, so if you know how that works, please share it in the comments so that we all have the answer to that question. Now in present day, April 2023, Courtney is still in jail. She's constantly trying to get out on parole, but she's been repeatedly denied parole. She did have a status conference on Monday, February the 6th of 2023, and status conferences are essentially pre-trial hearings that allow the judge, the prosecutor, and the defense team to meet to discuss any progress that's been made on the case. However, the details and the outcome of that meeting were not released to the public. So we're all still actually waiting for her murder trial date. So it looks like this is still ongoing and that we're all going to need to wait and see what happens. I'm really hoping that Courtney does not get off easy and that the justice system in the US actually comes through for this. But be sure to let me know in the comments what you guys think of this case, and I really look forward to your comments, and I hope to see you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for tuning into this video and for all of your support. And don't forget, if you like my content, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and to also hit the notification bell so that you can keep up with my new videos. Thank you so much, everybody, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead. Bye!